From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Iowa, it's so much more than livestock and grains.
This year we actually have a really nice crop though. I'm very pleased with what's been coming in.
We look at the potential that's pouring in when it comes to wine. And can solar and farming go together?
And if we can get multiple benefits out of one piece of land, then the whole community benefits.
Why researchers at Iowa State say yes. As a special panel of ag economists weigh in after the Fed holds interest rates steady and John Deere announced a round of layoffs. It's all happening right now. It's Ag Day at Iowa State as part of our College Roadshow.
The 2023 Ag Day College Roadshow from Iowa State is brought to you exclusively by Beck's. From farmers' first pass in the field to the final one at harvest, it's a game plan rooted in faith and belief. Beck's Hybrids is with you every turn because both on and off the field, we're all farmers at heart. See why at beckshybrids.com.
Hey, good morning. I'm Ben Griffiths coming to you from the beautiful campus of Iowa State University and aims for the Ag Day College Roadshow. Look at this crowd. We've got a great crowd here. Lots of enthusiasm. I'm joined today by economists Dermot Hayes and Lee Schultz. Thank you both for being here. Now we'll visit with them and look at some of the really cool ag research projects happening here at the university. But first, let's get to today's headlines. And we begin with a developing story. John Deere announcing it's laying off more than 200 workers from its Harvester Works location about 3 hours east of here in East Moline, Illinois. The company says it notified workers on Wednesday about the decision to cut 225 jobs. Currently, the plant has around 2,300 employees. In a news release, the company saying, quote, although John Deere has hired hundreds of employees in the Quad Cities in recent years, the company has consistently stated that each Deere factory balances the size of its production workforce with the needs of individual factories to optimize the workforce at each facility, end quote. Now, it comes at a time when the latest Association of Equipment Manufacturers report shows that combine sales are up almost 32% compared to last year. The cuts being called an indefinite layoff, they go into effect on October 16th. And layoffs are coming to automakers, and they are being blamed on the United Auto Workers strike currently going on. General Motors announcing it has idled a plant in Kansas with 2,000 workers because they don't have auto parts to work with. That's because production is shut down at an assembly plant in Missouri. That is one of the 3 plants across the country where the UAW has employees on strike. And Stellantis, the maker of Jeep and Chrysler, says it expects to lay off more than 300 workers in Ohio and Indiana. Drought conditions don't seem to have improved much as we move into harvest. A new drought monitor showing drought conditions worsened in the upper Midwest and Central Plains, with extreme and exceptional drought conditions ticking up. More than 23% of the nation remains in drought still. That's 6% lower than we were at this time last year. Corn and soybeans in drought also increasing, now at 58% of the nation's corn crop sitting in drought, up 4% from last week. 53% of soybeans, that's up 5%. Now some rain is coming that could help lessen those drought conditions. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht joins us with an update there.
Yeah, we're going to be talking more about where we're going to see some of the heavier downpours come through across the United States. Some developed off a low pressure system, others it's a low pressure system, but it's tropical in nature. So you see the rainfall totals, rainfall amounts with those smaller raindrops in a smaller space elevated up through North Carolina, the Outer Banks, back up into Virginia, and then swinging back off to the north and to the east. With this kind of hybrid tropical system, and you see how it cuts back to the west into Virginia and then back to the north. And we're just looking at the rainfall contour. Well, the reason why this is cutting back to the northeast and isn't sinking deeper into West Virginia, Pennsylvania, or even into Ohio is because of what's behind us. So with these systems moving from the west to the east, a shallow trough is going to bring a good amount of rainfall in and across the Dakotas, back down here to the south, and that is what's going to carry and kick that next system out. Also seeing some rain develop with a weaker low pressure system moving from the south to the north. So we got kind of 3 systems in total that we're following. One crossing west to east, one south to north, and the other one a little tropical in nature. Again, that's the precipitation forecast for the next 7 days. And Cale says a harvest is rolling for him in Nebraska. Cale harvesting some beans here. He says the beans are not better than expected. Again, are not. Let's hope things improve for Cale and all our farmers at harvest. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
For the first time since March, a survey of rural bankers has sunk below growth neutral. A new rural Main Street index from Creighton University is registering 49.5 this month. That's just below the 50 growth neutral mark. A downturn in farm income was registered by the bank CEOs surveyed as the #1 challenge to banking profitability right now. Now that's followed by rising interest rates. And about half of the bankers asked they expect economic conditions to worsen in the next 6 months. However, fewer than 4% of bankers reported an upturn in farm loan delinquencies over the past 6 months. Renewable energy projects continue to grow. Like wind turbines a decade ago, today solar farms are finding their way to America's farmland. Here at Iowa State, researchers are studying new ways to incorporate ag production while harvesting energy from the sun. Iowa is known for big yields, and soon this 10-acre site will be yielding renewable electricity.
What Iowa is a target for is a great place to study the combination of solar energy and agriculture. We do a lot of things really well in Iowa, and one of them is agriculture.
The 1.35 megawatt Alliant Energy solar farm at Iowa State is hoping to do both, harvest the power of the sun while utilizing the land below.
Estimates of about 1 million acres may be needed for solar energy production going into the next 20 to 30 years. Some of that land, not all of it, could be farmland. And that worries some people, especially those farmers in the Midwest. But we're going to test to see if that's actually not the case, that you can continue to farm under and around the panels and get multiple benefits out of one piece of land.
Over the next few years, ISU researchers will study the possibility of raising fruits and vegetables beneath those solar photovoltaic panels thanks to a $1.8 million grant from the Department of Energy.
That shady environment might be conducive for some of those plants to survive and maybe even thrive to the point where it becomes economically viable. We don't know yet. That's the point of the experiment.
They'll also look at the potential for pollinator habitat and bees.
Whether vegetation under the panels could provide habitat and flowers for pollinators, both for native bees, which are in decline, and also for honeybees, whose productivity has declined over the last 20 to 30 years.
This research farm is installing multiple styles of panels, from those that follow the sun to fixed panels and panels mounted higher above the ground.
Very little research has been done in this area, and very little has been done in Iowa, if any at all. It's an open question how much the difference in panel height and tilt versus fixed is going to affect vegetation.
The concept, called agrivoltaics, is a growing field of study as teams work to understand how these solar sites can also have agricultural purposes, improving the efficiency and the value of the land.
We have a rich history and a diverse community of farmers in Iowa that grow fruits and vegetables, and it's possible that this site could, and sites like this in the future, could contribute to that and build that sector of agriculture in Iowa.
From the first installations to a research farm for the future, it's a first of its kind public-private partnership with electric potential.
And if we can get multiple benefits out of one piece of land, then the whole community benefits.
The official ribbon cutting for this facility will be October 19th, and soon after that, the site will start producing energy. The first field season will be the summer of 2024. All right, when we come back, we'll catch back up with Lee and Dermot and talk about their view of ag markets and expectations for 2024. And later, from vine to wine, a look at the future of the Iowa wine and grape industries, thanks to research happening right here at Iowa State. The College Roadshow returns in just a moment. Hey, welcome back to Iowa State. We're here with Lee Schultz and Dermot Hayes talking about really what's going on in our crops and livestock markets. Dermot, let's start with you this time. Tell us about where these crop markets are as we kind of get ready for harvest, and what do you see as kind of the big picture, mosaic as we end this year?
So It was a tough year weather-wise, but apparently the crops didn't suffer as much as we thought they had. So we could have an average yield. Unfortunately for us, Brazil has been killing us on the export market. China's been buying a lot of corn and beans, but they typically are buying from Brazil, and Brazilians kind of creating acres by growing a second crop of corn. And so they're becoming a dominant exporter of corn and soybeans, and we're losing market share and prices.
You talk about market share and prices. We start to look at that big picture. Is there anything that we can do to fundamentally change that, or do we need to continue to be competitive out there?
Well, the good news is we're starting to add value to our crops with ethanol and biofuels. So maybe Brazil can have the commodity market and we'll have the value-added market.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about value-added, obviously livestock's one way to do that. Let's look at beef and hogs right now, Lee, as we look at those markets, completely different markets as we try to work through, this season.
Certainly is a tale of two different stories. The hog market, this is some of the worst financial times that producers have faced in 25 years. And we're gonna stack that with negative returns again in 2024. At least that's what the market is shaping up to be. Cattle producers, this is some of the best returns we've seen in roughly 10 years. Cow-calf producers, this is gonna be the first time they've really making some money this fall, and I think we're gonna start to talk about expansion. The feedlot sectors have rather profitable levels throughout 2023. Now the concern is what they're paying for feeder cattle and what that's translated into for returns in 2024. Just shows the risk there is in the market because of really the dollars that are at stake.
How big a risk is the cost of feed, obviously, right now? That's come down a little bit. Is that helping things?
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that the animals we're marketing now, they had ate a lot of expensive feed. So their break-even costs are still relatively high. It's some of the animals that we're starting to place now and we'll be placing in the fall that will have lower break-even levels because of the lower feed prices. What I like to remind folks is it's not just feed. We've seen costs increase dramatically over the last several years. Feed is part of that, but a lot of those non-feed variable costs and fixed costs have increased, and I think that's contributing to those higher break-even levels.
Yeah, Dermot, as you look at 2024, what's the number one thing that's on your radar for next year?
Will China buy corn, and where will they buy it from? That's the big market mover. They were not corn importers at all, and then in 2020 they came in about 7% of our crop, and now they're not buying any of it. But they need it, and they're getting it from Brazil, but they may come back, and that would be the market mover.
That would be a big market mover. Anything else on your radar as far as market movers?
Carry out.
There's
a lot of uncertainty about what the carry out will be. It should be okay for corn, but the soybean carry out will be tight.
All right. Well, I appreciate you both for being here. Thanks for joining us for Ag Day. We'll be back with a check of your weather coming up in just a minute.
I wanted to revisit the precipitation estimate and also show you what's going on in the southeast, because I think it really does a good job kind of separating where we're going to see a dry forecast into Tennessee and Georgia and a wet forecast. But again, these are going to be connected between a tropical system, hybrid tropical system moving to the north, and then a weak trough swinging in and across the United States. The temperature outlook September 26th through the 30th is pretty interesting. We got some cooler than average temperatures, so on the blue contour where that tropical system is scooting through the east coast, and then you got a pocket of some warmer than average temperatures in and across, I'd say about a third, if not 2/3 of the United States, well above average back into Minnesota, Wisconsin, even into the Dakotas. And then the other side on the west coast, left coast, cooler than average. So what we're seeing is we're painting a jet stream that's going to be digging down north to south, a trough on the west coast, and then that ridge of high pressure in between this hybrid low pressure system, this tropical system on the east coast, ridge of high pressure, and then the low or the trough on the west coast. The reason I point that out is because everything is going to be moving next week west to east. So where we're seeing the cooler than average temperatures, that energy is going to try and kick some of that high pressure, or at least break that pattern down by the middle part of next week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The flooding potential as we go into our Friday, obviously where that tropical system is located, both through North Carolina up into Virginia, about a 15 to 40% chance of some flooding, and then up into Montana and the Dakotas. And this has been very consistent going back the last couple of days. Let's go take a look at Louisiana. Mostly cloudy, high around 91, low of 69. Union City, Tennessee, partly cloudy, high of 87. Bumpus, Virginia, sunny, high 71.
When you think of crops grown in Iowa, you probably don't think of millet, but that could soon be changing. Meet Iowa State plant breeder Patrick Schnabel and his son James. They're the co-founders of Dryland Genetics, and they think Proso Millet could make ag in this area more resilient and profitable. Now, it's a hardy cereal grain that requires about half the water that corn needs per bushel of grain produced. And it's managed similar to corn, but it doesn't need nitrogen fertilizer, and farmers can use the same equipment they use to plant and harvest corn and soybeans. Currently, Proso Millet is most often sold in the U.S. as bird seed or in gluten-free health foods, but it can be substituted most of the time for uses of corn, including as animal feed and ethanol. Working with Iowa State, they hope to make this a high-value crop for the future in Iowa. And future farmers have to learn about more than just planting crops and growing them. They also have to, in some cases, know how to repair their own equipment. Recently, Iowa State students in the ag program got to install an upgrade kit on one of the university's 20-year-old planters. They worked alongside John Deere technicians, adding new hydraulics, electrical systems, and row units.
From this whole process, I learned there's a lot to go into building these planters, being a part of taking it apart, repairing it, putting it back together. It's really special because then we'll be able to get to use that machinery.
The new technology will also improve seeding spacing, depth, and placement. Now, Iowa is known for a lot of things when it comes to ag, but how about wine? A look at this growing industry and the important role Iowa State plays next. Well, Iowa is known for its corn, soybeans, and livestock production, but if researchers here have their way, it may soon be known for its fine wines. The sights and the sounds.
So it's a busy couple of weeks.
Feel almost out of place.
This year we actually have a really nice crop, though. I'm very pleased with what's been coming in.
It's harvest season at this Iowa State research vineyard.
We've already been analyzing these particular grapes since about the beginning of August.
The vineyard was planted about 10 years ago a few miles north of Ames in hopes of answering basic questions for local producers.
There's about 100 wineries in Iowa and probably about 200 vineyards. These grapes, I always like to call them, these are cold, hardy, interspecific hybrid grape varieties, and I like to call them weird and wonderful.
Grapes are very high maintenance.
Farm Superintendent Nick Howell is responsible for that maintenance.
The big issue with grapes in Iowa is vigor, and there's too much vigor. With that, you end up with fewer grapes, and then the grapes are shaded.
It's all part of figuring out the best way to grow grapes in Iowa.
As soon as the grapes start to develop color, we cover it with the bird netting that you're seeing, and then we have to put an electric fence around the vineyard too to keep things like raccoons out.
We are looking at different basic canopy management techniques within the vineyard and how exposed we allow the grapes to be and how that translates into the wine.
From the field to fermentation, more than 3 tons of grapes are making their way to wine bottles in this recently renovated commercial winery.
The particular harvest we're going to do today is rosé, so that's going to get pressed right away and into tank, and we'll start the fermentation tomorrow.
All told, they're aiming to produce about 300 gallons of wine annually, with sales pouring back into the research.
I think the future is super bright. I like to think that we're pushing the boundaries like they were in Napa Valley 50, 60 years ago.
Which is why the Midwest Grape and Wine Industry Institute at ISU sees real potential in adding variety to the state's ag industry.
You know, it's an interesting crop. It's a good crop. It's a complex crop to grow, but if you can do it well, it's high value.
All right, absolutely. What an interesting project. Just one of the many things happening here at Iowa State University. Hey, that's our time. Thanks to the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences for hosting us and to all of the students that came out. For all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day out in farm country.
The 2023 AgDay College Roadshow from Iowa State is brought to you exclusively by Beck's. From farmers' first pass in the field to the final one at harvest, it's a game plan rooted in faith and belief. Beck's Hybrids is with you every turn because both on and off the field, we're all farmers at heart. See why at beckshybrids.com.